Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whisky podcast. I'm joined this season and every season with the one and only Jason Neil Johnston Yellen. Hiya, Jason.
Hello. Welcome to Season 7.
Season 7? That's a number.
It is a number. It is a number.
But does it feel 7 years ago that we both came to one another and said, hey, let's do a thing?
It's another one of those time moments, right? Mm-hmm. Does it feel like 7? No. Does it feel like something else? No. Does it feel like time has passed? Yes.
Yeah.
Does it seem measurable by any metric? No.
No. Kind of. I mean, if I were to just pick a number out the sky, the number that feels comfortable around this is 3 for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it feels only 3 seasons in for me, despite us being 7 seasons now into our 7th season. Yeah.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I do still remember sitting on Stirk's casting couch and answering questions that made me feel uncomfortable. Or perhaps that's his position. Maybe he answered questions that made him feel uncomfortable.
He was on our casting couch.
Right? In his building.
Isn't
it funny that we had a casting couch in his building?
I'll never forget that day. I remember going there and he turned on the record player and put on Yes, Close to the Edge because he knew how much I loved that album. And he was like, Joshua, you're going to love this. And he just blasted Yes, Close to the Edge. We got to taste, what did we get to do? We got to taste caramel coloring for the first time. I still have that little container of caramel coloring.
From the handle of a teaspoon.
Yeah. I'm like, why do you have this? I've got a client who wants it. That poor client.
They got what they wanted.
They did get
There's no doubt about it. Yeah, and back then, our first episode was 40-something minutes.
43 minutes.
It was almost a tight 35 back in the day.
Yeah, it was 43 minutes. I feel it was 43 minutes. And we felt that was going to be it. Like we can't go beyond 45 minutes. Like, what else is there to talk about? How else are we going to conduct a conversation? Now we don't have an interview, or we rarely have an interview that's less than 45 minutes, which I think is better, right? I don't know about you, but I really enjoy the long form discussions.
I think so.
Yeah.
Could cut everything around the interview, but yeah, I like the interview.
Oh, that's right. We do record more of ourselves than we do the actual interview, as evidenced by this intro.
You're not the first person to comment on that.
Wow. We call those favorites.
Well, can I do this, Joshua?
All right. You could do anything. This is America, Jason.
It's apropos. Given what we just said about, yes, we do record more of ourselves than we do the interviewee. I have an email to share at the start of season 7.
Is this so? Are you setting a precedent, or are you just deciding to change it up in the bedroom a little bit?
Well, the reason I want to introduce this person because it shows that there are people listening to this, which I think is important. So this came into the info at Singlecast Nation account, and the person in charge of the account that day actually got a pronunciation. So I can tell you that we got an email from, let's play our usual game, Joshua. Here's a second name for you that I will spell. So cast this to your mind's eye.
Shoot.
You're going to love how it starts. P-F E-I
Michelle Pfeiffer?
F-L-E. Do you have that in your mind's eye?
So at first I thought it was Michelle Pfeiffer, and then you kept going. So P-F...
Yep.
Eifle?
Yep.
Fifle? Catwoman.
So this is Ryan, and Ryan says, my ancestors were apparently illiterate because it is pronounced Fifely.
Oh, did I get close at all? Did I say Fifely? I think I said
You can listen back to the raw audio.
All right, so go on.
So Ryan Fifely writes in to say, love the podcast. I have been listening while building our single malt distillery on our farm in Montana. The building is up, stills are nearly finished, and the SS equipment is in a shipping container.
SS
While
equipment?
I won't have any of our whiskey to sell for many years, I want to make you aware of my friends who were the first single malt distillery in Argentina.
Ah, okay.
And then I'm looking at a URL that looks like La Alazana whiskey.
I've heard of them through Drammers, I want to say, or through someone, at a Drammers meeting. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, so he goes on, super passionate and interesting people. In the future, we will be doing Northern-Southern Hemisphere collaborations. Please check them out. We plan to import some of their spirit in the fall. So, La Alazana, coming from Argentina in the fall. There's then a few photos. And then the info account wrote back to say, hey, love to cover this on the podcast. We'll share this with the guys. And how do you pronounce your name? Because they'll screw it up, which hence we played the game today. And so Ryan wrote back, fantastic about the email being received, in all honesty. Thanks so much for the response. I'm not necessarily looking for a mention, just wanted to say hi and hope maybe we can collaborate in the future. Which, always makes me think of our friends Lee and Bree Atwood down in Yakindanda with Lee in the still house listening to the podcast, and now the relationship we've got there. So Montana is years in the future, but then Ryan adds that kind of interesting thing that you and I talk about on and off. First of all, he says, forgot to mention that I lived a year in Scotland, the year 2007, Joshua, if you can cast your mind back to the year 2007. And he lived in Scotland before coming back to the farm. And he says, I was fascinated by how the Scotch climate and culture created their whiskey. Now it's my mission to see what kind of whiskey will result from my farm and our climate.
Did you say that he found it fascinating that it wasn't just your climate, but the Scottish culture that made the whiskey?
Exactly. Climate and culture.
Like that. Yeah.
Isn't that a good observation there?
It really is. It really is. I like that. It makes me think. I've been to Montana once. I drove through it. I remember coming over. This was 1996. Driving over a hill, dead of night, and seeing the city of Butte, Montana, just lit up, just lighting up the night sky, and getting gas there, and then moving on. But I really didn't have much experience of Montana driving through. That's big sky country, though. I wonder what the culture is like there. Just big, open, wilderness kind of feel. I wonder what that's going to do to his whiskeys.
Warm summers, cold winters.
Yeah.
Missoula, Montana is a real cool little town.
Oh, right. You've been. Okay.
Yeah, worth hanging out in over there. Good pizza. Real good pizza.
Oh, go easy, Jason. Is that
Grabbed some with my boys. They were so happy.
Is that where the dental floss tycoon lives? He moved to Montana to become a dental floss tycoon?
I don't know if any part of this is a joke or reality, or I don't know what we're referencing right now.
He uses zircon-encrusted tweezers to to lift up the dental floss, and he lifts it up, he waxes it up.
Is this real? What have I missed? What are you riffing off of in Missoula, Montana?
Every single Frank Zappa fan listening to this
now.
Lord. Moving to Montana soon. Gonna be a dental floss tycoon. Yeah. There you go, baby.
We're deep into Zappa. Now, there's a Venn diagram I wouldn't mind seeing. Those who remember and understand and have memorized the Frank Zappa catalog, and those who listen to One Nation Under Whisky. There might be one person out there right now loving this.
No, I highly disagree. What's the number one music that we hear people who are into Scotch whiskey listen to? What's the big one?
Prog rock and
jazz. And what's Frank Zappa? That plus so much more. I guarantee there's plenty of people, men and women, listening to Zappa, listening to our podcast, drinking our whiskey, drinking someone else's whiskey. I guarantee it.
Well, listen, I'm going to circle back to Ryan's email later in the episode.
Okay.
Because I don't want to derail us too far before we get into transitioning to Victoria Eady Butler and the time we spent with her.
Yeah, brilliant. That was such a wonderful conversation to be having with Victoria. Just so lovely. Just such an easy conversation, hearing her story, hearing her family's story, and some of the history and connections to Jack Daniels. And yeah, I thought it was fascinating, and I kind of agree with you. We can easily derail things. We can easily take focus, but why not put focus onto our conversation with Victoria? Victoria, thank you again so much for joining us. As we mentioned before we hit record, you were a person that Jason and I wanted to have on the podcast for a while, and when Amanda Katz reached out to us and said that you were interested in being on our podcast. See that, Jason? I said podcast instead of podcast.
That's an inside joke, at least.
It felt like kismet. It felt like something that was meant to be. So truly, thank you for joining us. Mm-hmm. You may or may not be tired of telling your origin story because I feel it's quite out there, right? It's been great over the past 5 years or so, reading more and more about Uncle Nearest and your whiskeys and your evolving story. But for those that are listeners of the podcast that may not know of the Uncle Nearest story, I wonder if you could talk about the origins, your own connection as the great-great-granddaughter of Nathan Green, or Uncle Nearest. That would be a great way to set the table, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, I don't mind at all. And I never grow tired of sharing the story. Oddly enough, there are still so many people who don't know our story. And so I never grow tired of sharing it. So thank you. Thank you for having me on today. I'm really glad to be here with you to share the story and talk about whatever you guys have on your heart to talk about. So in regards to our history, our story, how we started, I can't take credit for that. Our CEO and founder, her name is Fawn Weaver. She is a brilliant, caring, generous woman who I have grown to love quite deeply. Our relationship is one that I cherish dearly. But Fawn was on a trip in 2016 with her husband when she picked up the New York Times and sees this story about a once enslaved man who taught a young Jack Daniel how to distill. The article goes into a little bit of their relationship. That article intrigued Fawn to want to know more about Nearest Green. And so she Googled and researched and really couldn't find anything. And so she decided that she would go to Lynchburg, Tennessee to try to uncover more about this story. And she felt in her spirit even then that there was a relationship there that was unknown, unheard of during a time of racial tension in our country, during a time when an enslaved man got the same treatment as a white man in regards to relationship with this young white boy. And so she wanted to know more about Nearest Green. And so she arrives in Lynchburg in 2016, and she puts together a team of 20 individuals that included genealogists and historians and such to help her uncover what we now know to be the legacy, the history of Nearest Green, my great-great-grandfather. Now, she knew that Nearest had a relationship with Jack Daniel. That article, of course, stated that. But during the course of the research, she learned that Nearest Green arrived in Tennessee in the mid-1800s. She found that he was born sometimes around 1820, we believe 1820, in Maryland, and at some point was transported to Tennessee. And he was working on a farm for a preacher named Dan Call. Now, Dan Call, true enough, was a preacher, but he was also selling whiskey, and Nearest Green is the man who was making it for him. And on that farm, a young white boy arrived when he was about 7 or 8 years old, and he obviously was a curious lad because the research shows that he kept asking Dan Call about what was going on in the distance from the house. He wanted to know what was happening over there. And knowing the story now, I can imagine there was a lot of commotion where Nearest was making the whiskey. There was smoke, likely even music and people talking. And so this young boy wanted to know what was happening. And so finally Dan Call gives in, and he takes him to meet Nearest Green. And he introduces Nearest Green to a young Jack Daniel and says that Nearest Green is the best whiskey maker around. And indeed he was. Through Fawn's research, she learned that Nearest was responsible for helping to perfect what is known as the Lincoln County process. That is the process of filtering whiskey through sugar maple charcoal. We believe that innovation was brought over from our people in West Africa. It is still used today to purify water. And so we just believe that Nearest, in his infinite wisdom, thought if it worked for water, it would also work for whiskey. And indeed it did, and still does. In 2013, the governor of Tennessee signed into law that any whiskey desiring to be Tennessee whiskey must meet all the qualifications of bourbon, but it also has to be made in Tennessee, and it must adhere to the Lincoln County process. And so that makes Nearest Green the godfather of Tennessee whiskey. Without that invention, that method, Tennessee whiskey would just be another spirit. But because of what Nearest helped perfect, Tennessee whiskey is in a category of its own. And so when Fawn was learning all of this out, she was sharing with my family along the way, because when she arrived in Tennessee, she started meeting Jack Daniel's relatives, certainly Nearest Green's descendants, and of course the townspeople of Lynchburg. And through the time that she was doing the research, more than 10,000 artifacts rolled into her. And so people were very generous and forthright in sharing information. The team that she assembled were dedicated to finding out all they could about this man that no one knew about. And so Fawn was sharing with the family, and during the course of one of our meetings, she asked the family, knowing what we know now about Nearest making history of his own, not just being an enslaved man who made whiskey for Dan Call, and not just having this beautiful, unheard of relationship with Jack Daniel, but he also made history of his own. In addition to helping to perfect the Lincoln County process, he also became the first known African-American master distiller. And so Nearest was a history maker, right? He was innovative and creative. And so Fawn deemed it necessary to pay homage to this man that no one knew about for more than 160 plus years. And so she asked the family, what would you guys like to see happen? And one of the family members said, we'd like to see his name on a bottle. Now, keep in mind that when Fawn rolled into Tennessee in 2016, it was not with the idea of making whiskey. Fawn is certainly a brilliant woman. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's a New York Times best-selling author. But making whiskey was not on the agenda. The thought then was perhaps she would gather as much information as she could about Nearest, learning all she could about him, meeting his family. She had already formed the Nearest Green Foundation that supports Nearest's bloodline descendants in going to college. We pay for full tuition, all fees, and books related to their college classes. But she wanted to do more for the family, right? And so when the thought of making whiskey was posed, she said, why not? And she reached in to Catherine Jerkins, who is now our chief business officer, and a few other people along the way. She started adding to the team. And in 2017, the first bottle of Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey rolled off the line and onto the shelves of bars and liquor stores. Naturally, I'm giving you the condensed version. As you might imagine, Fawn and the handful of people that started to pound the rock every day leading up to our launch in 2017, they put in a lot of work. There were a lot of long days and nights and hurdles to cross, especially with her being an African-American woman and wanting to honor an African-American man. There were some hurdles to cross, but Fawn took all of that in stride and used it to her advantage. And now here we are, 5 years later. We are the fastest growing American spirit in history. We are the most awarded whiskey or bourbon for the last 3 years. And shortly we will be announcing that we also are the most awarded for 2022 as well. We are the only major whiskey brand that is owned and led by an African-American woman. The only major whiskey or spirit brand that is honoring an African-American man. And we have the first and I think only all-female executive team.
That's something I noticed as I was reading some of the backstory. I said each name is a female. There's another female and another.
It is. Now I'll be extremely transparent. There is no secret here. When Fawn was putting the team together, she didn't actively seek out to build an all-female executive team. What she sought and continues to seek every day is when we add to the team is to fill it with the best person for the position. And for us, it ended up being all females for the executive team. And now that we are here, we have embraced the fact that we are the first all-female executive team. And we do one hell of a job in going about being good examples of being the first. But we certainly hope that we are not the last, right? We strive every day, the Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey team, not just the executive team, but the whole team. We strive every day to be good stewards of what we have worked hard for and what we have been blessed to achieve and receive. And so while we have broken the glass ceiling, so to speak, as being the first on several different things, we certainly don't want to be the last. And so it is our motto and something that we live by, and something Fawn does every day is to pull as we climb, to help others in the same industry, in this spirits industry that we are working hard to make more diverse. Our team is extremely diverse. We have black, white, young, old, gay, straight. We look like the face of America, and we are very proud of that. We are very proud of that.
I've so many different places to go with questions here, but just on this very topic, one of the things we dip in and out of is gatekeeping.
Yes.
And the fact that you just said there, and I've already forgotten the exact words, but, lifting up while pulling through, pulling up while, blazing a trail.
Yes.
Like, there's so much conversation around the work that's being done that speaks of community, that speaks of people. And one of the things that, as I mentioned, we're always grappling with here is gatekeeping. You've got this wonderful natural story that's talking about disempowered people, and you're lending empowerment to that. Generally speaking, as an industry, do you have thoughts on how gatekeeping can be done better by those of us who don't have as natural a story? Is that something you concern yourself with? Is that something you think about? Are you busy blazing your own trail?
No. I think we always have to be concerned about others, not just ourselves. Making our industry more diverse is certainly one of the things that we are working towards. For many, many years, far too many years, as far as I'm concerned, this has been a white male-dominated industry. And now that is changing. I can't say that that's because of the Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey team and what we have done and how we look, but things have definitely changed since we came on the scene, and we are glad of that, right? There is room for all of us, not just a white male, and so we are proud to, if we are the leader in changing that. We're proud to do so. We're proud to continue working towards making this industry that we love so much more diverse and inclusive.
Well, and I wonder, I read a piece that you'd said, and I think you alluded to it even in today's words, where the awards you're winning are tasted blind.
Yes.
And I got the feeling in reading your words and hearing some of your words today that you're so proud of that aspect, where there's no getting away from who you are and who the team is and what the distillery is representing, and yet the awards are awarded blind.
Yes.
Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. Our story is so compelling. And what I love most about it is that it doesn't have to be embellished. Everything that we share is documented, so we don't have to embellish to make it a real story, right? And I love that. I love that our team, our CEO and founder, is transparent about everything that we do. But our whiskey speaks for itself as well. And so because our story is what it is, we only submit to blind taste tests because we don't want anyone to be swayed by this beautiful story.
Sure.
And so they taste our product blindly, and we continue to knock it out the box, right? And so we're proud of that. We do submit our product to a lot of competitions, and we're not complacent, although we've won just, I can't remember the number now, more than 575, I think, awards. And we like to continue to knock it out with a gold, double gold, best in class. So we strive every day to continue to maintain that quality of winning those types of awards, but also continue to put a premium whiskey in the bottle for the consumers who have come to love our brand so much.
And so we're privileged to be talking to the master blender of that product. So how do you do it?
Thank you. I'm proud of it. When Fawn asked me to blend that first batch of Uncle Nearest 1884 in May of 2019, I had no idea where this thing would go. But now that we are here, I just cannot imagine doing anything else. I wanted to be a part of the team. When she approached me about being a part of the team, naturally I said yes. There's very few people, none actually that I know of, who have the opportunity to pick up a legacy and be a part of cementing that legacy, after it lay dormant for more than 160 plus years. So the thought of being a part of that, it was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to be a part of this amazing team, this family that Fawn Weaver had created. And so saying yes was really easy. And then finding my place as a master blender, it has been a beautiful journey, and I'm so grateful for it.
So, for the benefit of our listeners, you were in the law enforcement world. I think you had ambitions to be a judge. Am I right in saying that, Victoria?
Well, I didn't actually have ambitions for that. My grandmother thought, that I would be good at being a judge. I have always enjoyed talking, and so that was one of the things that she would say, But I didn't really have aspirations to be a judge. Now, I was blessed to work in a field that I really enjoyed for almost 31 years. I felt like the work we did there helped to make our community safe, and so it was a heavy job. It was a very important job, but now what I'm doing is extremely important to me as well. To be a part of continuing my great-great-grandfather's legacy, to work in the same vein that he did all those years ago. I love it. I absolutely love it. I know that it is a blessing. When Fawn asked me to blend our first batch of 1884, I had no idea that my yes was unlocking a passion that I didn't know existed. So since then, it's been awesome. I really can't explain this journey other than it's been a blessing. Just an unexpected, beautiful blessing.
Oh, I love that.
Were you a drinker beforehand when you were in your first career?
I did drink. I started drinking later. Most of us will dab and sip when we're younger. I was a full-fledged college student before I really started drinking. And once I knew what a good drink was, I enjoyed some E.H. Taylor and Maker's Mark 46. They were my go-tos. And I guess I still like them. I haven't had them since I started, drinking Uncle Nearest, but those were the things that I enjoyed. And I still enjoy a good cold beer.
There you go. Okay.
Cools the throat after a hard day of being in the lab.
It does. I like a good cold beer.
I've got one more question just on this ilk, and then I'll let Joshua get another word in edgewise.
Oh, you're going to let me speak, Jason. It's unexpected, Victoria. Unexpected.
So long as you're recording on your end, I'll let you have all the words you want. So, I like it each time you kind of come back to when I was invited to do this blending, and here I've got this great honor, and here I've got this blessing, and here I've got this connection to family. Flavor-wise, did you have a goal when you were facing that vatting? What were you thinking to yourself? What was going across your palate? And did you have flavors that you were particularly fond of?
Well, this was my thought. Because I didn't know anything about blending really when I went into the first session. Now, granted, I have taken plenty classes since then, and I hope to always be a student of my craft. In spite of winning so many awards, I do not know everything. Only a foolish person thinks that, right? And but before I blended that first batch, I did start trying to learn all I could about the industry, just so that I could at least have an intelligent conversation with others in the field, right? And so I go in to blend that first batch, and my only thought was, because Uncle Nearest was already a premium product, I wanted to ensure that what I did met the standard that our CEO and founder, Fawn Weaver, had put in place, and that the consumers were already drinking, and I wanted it to have a good finish. Those were the things that I liked about E.H. Taylor and Maker's Mark 46. The finish left me thinking, wow, this is an enjoyable drink. It wasn't pungent. It was strong and lasting, but not pungent. And so those were my thoughts going into that first blending session, is that I do what has already been done by maintaining this quality product, and that the finish be good. And so during the course of that first blending session, Fawn said she knew about midway through that I had something special. We had other teammates in there with me that had years and years of experience, right? And so when we were tasting and writing down our notes, lo and behold, our notes were almost identical. And so they tell me that's unheard of, right? And so they were there cheering me on. I had the best people around me. The positive energy gave me the encouragement to make the decisions based on my palate and based on what I enjoyed. And thankfully, what I did, what I chose to blend when it hit the market in July 2019, that the consumers thought that it was good as well. And so we started winning awards with it right out the gate. Gold, double gold, best in class, those types of awards that we want. And so Fawn asked me to blend the second batch, and I did, and the awards and the accolades, they kept coming. And shortly thereafter, I was elevated to master blender, and I have blended every batch since then.
Wow.
It brings me perfectly to the question that I had. No, please, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I unknowingly loved the spirits industry. Didn't know it. Didn't know that I just genuinely would enjoy this. I love people. I enjoy meeting new people, talking to people. I guess you can tell. That was one of my things. I'm big on hospitality, and I'm a Southern girl to the bone, right? And so those things I knew about myself, but I did not know that the art of blending whiskey was something that I would enjoy or even consider doing. But now I know I have fully embraced and embody that whiskey is truly in my blood, that those characteristics that my great-great-grandfather had all those years ago in making whiskey, his great-great-granddaughter has in blending whiskey. Yeah. And she loves it. I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
That's awesome. I love it. There's a couple things in there that I wanted to touch on. The first one really quickly, I love how you talk about finish, and that's something that's so key to you in a final drink. We've got a friend, and maybe maybe you've met him, Gene Sharness of Warehouse Liquors in Chicago, and that is the linchpin for him. If that whiskey doesn't have a good finish, then it wasn't a good whiskey in the first place.
No, because the finish, it either makes it or break it for me. And so that's why when I'm blending, I do not spit out the product. I learned that most blenders do. I did not know that. To me, it was just common sense. How do you know what the finish is if you spit it out? So I don't spit out any of our liquid gold when I am blending whiskey.
Yeah, I always say my muscles don't work in that direction.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. It doesn't work in that direction. It's to swallow.
So I'm curious to know, as you were working to blend your first batch, your approach to it, and then as you continued on, what is your process looking like for blending from batch to batch? And also, I imagine, and I could be wrong here, but I wonder if there's different approaches to blending, whether it's your 1884, 1820, 56, and so on. How do you approach that?
It's really not a different approach. I come to each one basically the same way. I don't drink while I'm blending, before I'm blending. I don't spit out the product. I take my time, whether it be 3 hours or 8. I don't concentrate on what I did the last time. My concentration is making this batch, this blend, this bottle the very best that it can be. So I don't ever look back and try to make comparisons. I want what I'm doing right now to be the very best that it can be.
So you're not necessarily concerned so much about consistency from batch to batch, just that each batch be
the best. And oddly
delicious.
enough, that has worked best for me, for our brand. But it has turned out to be consistent without me even really trying, because it's my palate now. My palate is, I guess, trained on the 1856, or when I go into blend, my concentration is the 1884. And so it's been consistent. I don't think the average consumer, the average drinker would know, pick up any difference in batch to batch, other than maybe this single barrel that we have now. But it's going to be different because each barrel is different, right? And so with it being a single barrel, there is no blending that goes into that. So each batch or each barrel, they will be different. My job for the single barrel is pick out the very best barrel to be bottled. And so consistency definitely doesn't come into play there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a world that that we're familiar with on our independent bottling side of things. Jason, I see you have a question in the chamber. Please hold it, because I had another question. It's about process. Calm down.
I got hundreds. They're not going anywhere.
Oh, we know. So you hear quite often about blenders taking the liquid, sometimes the individual components, sometimes what they hope to be the final product, and bring it down to like 20% alcohol or something like that to ensure that everything sits in its right place. Do you blend that way, or do you blend to how it's going to taste when you open up the bottle?
That's how I taste at barrel strength, at cask strength.
Yep.
I'll blend it at cask strength, and then we bring it down. As you probably know, Joshua and Jason, there is very little water that goes into our whiskey, whether it be the 1884 or 56. We just don't use much water. We are a high proof whiskey. Our 1884 is 93 proof. Our 1856 is 100 proof. And now we have the 100 proof rye. We just put very little water in. We don't proof up. It doesn't go in real high and then proof down, add in the water. We want each bottle, each time you drink it, you get the full beauty, the full essence of the whiskey. So very little water goes into our whiskey in the bottle.
Sure.
Yep, I hear you on that.
Yep. And then I had a question regarding your rye whiskey. It's an unusual mash bill. It's 100% rye.
It is.
So you don't find that happening too much. So can you talk a little bit about your rye whiskey and how?
And I also want to share that everything, all of our expressions are our own juice now. When we first started, we were sourcing. But earlier this year, the first of the year, we started bottling our own product from start to finish, with the exception of the rye that launched a few weeks ago. Rye does not readily grow conducive for making whiskey here in Tennessee. It comes up with wild onion. So our rye is sourced. And what we are bottling now, it was an experiment in Canada, but it was made with U.S. specs, right? So once Fawn identified that and realized that it was made with United States, with American whiskey specifications, she bought every bit of it, all of it. So it is. It is. It starts out in Canada, then it comes to New York. It is aged there, and then it is shipped to our distillery, and it is transferred into a Uncle Nearest barrel, and it resides in that barrel for about a month or so, and then we bottle it.
Two things I love so much. You came out the gate talking about the story of Uncle Nearest, and the fact that it's true. And there's so many brands out there that may have a made up story. But you came out the gate with a real story, and then you came out with being very open about sourcing, and not all brands would be open about sourcing. So I really appreciate the transparency that you're showing here, and that led me to another question, and you may have already answered this when explaining how you blend, but as you were going from sourced product to your own product with the bourbon, was there a transition? Did you marry some of your own liquid with the sourced?
We did.
To get you to what is now your own?
We did. Yeah. We did. It was just a gradual process. This is one of the things that we quickly realized when we were sourcing. We were so anxious to get to our whiskey, to our own, because we were sourcing our product. Of course, it was Tennessee-based, but we were killing them in all the competitions. And so we were just excited to get our own juice in the bottle. It was a gradual thing, but now it's all Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey. Very exciting for us. We did a Clear the Chef campaign earlier this year, that started, we sold off all of our old bottles and put all of our new bottles with the new label and everything. So we have started our legacy at the Nearest Green Distillery. We are really proud to have our home to where we honor Nearest Green there. We welcome in people from all over the country every Thursday through Sunday. We have 323 beautiful acres in Shelbyville, Tennessee. Our tours are rich in history. Of course, Nearest Green will always be the highlight and the primary focus. But we talk about all things Tennessee, things that some people may not, a lot of people didn't realize was made or started in Tennessee. We pay homage to the Women's Suffrage March and highlight those women who made a way for us, for me, to have the ability to vote as a female. And so it's just rich in history. I encourage everyone, if you have the opportunity, to please come visit Nearest Green Distillery. It truly is a destination spot, a place that you won't forget visiting. It is not your typical distillery tour.
It's the fact that it sits on 323 acres. Like, that seems
it
vast.
was a very historic and beloved Tennessee walking horse farm. And so we've tried really hard to maintain the beauty of that farm. We only took down just a few buildings. They were old, dilapidated barns, but we refurbished that wood on the property. And we still have Tennessee walking horses there on the property as well.
What's a walking horse? I've never heard that term.
You. Yeah.
It is different. I forget what it is bred with. It's two horses from different breeds that are bred together, and they kind of have a high gallop when they walk. Their back hoofs doesn't really move, but the front are high gaping.
Wow.
You need to Google that, Jason and Joshua. There is the Tennessee Walking Horse Celebration that takes place in Shelbyville, Tennessee every year. People from around the world come to it. They bring their horses there to compete. It is quite the celebration. I think it's the end of August, first part of September. It is something to see. It really is.
I will be Googling this as soon as we get out of this interview.
You have to Google that.
Tennessee walking horse.
Tennessee walking horse. And so where our Welcome Center is, that was like the show stadium. And so we just built out to make it fit our needs. But when Fawn purchased that property, it was sawdust on the floor. It had stadium seating. But now it looks quite different. I would love for you guys to come down and visit. It's really something to see.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here in Virginia. It's easy peasy to get over to Tennessee.
Oh, so. Absolutely. Yeah. So you should come visit. Sure. Like I said, we have sold out tours every weekend. And when our schedule permits, Fawn and I, one of us, are there signing bottles on the weekend.
Oh, nice.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that.
Before we get too far away from the blending story, I did have a question. You used a word in something in an interview I read with you, and it immediately made me think of Stephanie McLeod, master blender with the Bacardi brands. And it's a word that regular listeners of the podcast know that Joshua hates. And yet Stephanie McLeod uses it. You use it, right? People that we respect. The word smooth. And so we continually have this debate on the podcast. Sometimes our listeners write in with questions as well. I think Joshua may be coming around to smooth having a place in whiskey.
I'm getting there. I'm
right?
getting there.
But as a standalone, it doesn't necessarily work. What do you mean when you use smooth, Victoria? What's that conveying for you in the whiskey experience?
Well, for me, I certainly think that word has a place. For me, it's a good mouthfeel, right? It goes down without a pungent burn. Kind of like eating a good dessert. With each bite of the dessert, you yearn for more. That's what smooth whiskey is to me. It makes you yearn to have another sip, to maybe create another cocktail with it. It's just a full embodiment of a quality whiskey.
Well, and certainly mouthfeel is something we discuss all the time in our own cast selections. And we talk about oily and unctuous and viscous.
Yes.
But we never go as far as smooth. It just makes Joshua irate. He seems calm today, but it really,
hopefully,
really grinds his gears.
What I shared with the analogy of the dessert, it makes Joshua think a little bit different. Does it make?
Well, it made me hungry, is what it did.
Does that make sense, Joshua?
When you compare smooth to mouthfeel, that makes perfect sense to me, right? Because where you talk about finish and that being something that's so key to your experience or so key to what you consider to be a great whiskey. For both Jason and I, it's mouthfeel. If you don't have a great mouthfeel, it's that you lose the experience there as well. And so I definitely see the connection of smooth to mouthfeel. And when I think about dessert, right, what are the things that I love in a dessert? If it's ice cream, it's that creamy texture along with flavor. If it's like a good pie or something, you want that like soft, warm, buttery crust. And like it is all textural, that it's that texture to flavor combination getting delivered to you that I like about dessert. And and that's how you think about smooth, I'm A-okay with that.
Cool.
With that.
I love it. I love it when we can all be on the same page.
So that was my question, just to kind of round off the blending.
Yeah, I use the word smooth a lot, and it's because of the reasons that I just shared. Again, the finish is my thing, but the full experience of drinking whiskey, it all comes together, starting with the nose, then the palate, then the finish. It all has to work together to make it a good product.
Absolutely, yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And we've talked in numerous places about, we'll do the nose test, and if a sample doesn't pass the nose, it doesn't advance to the mouth.
That's right.
Because if it doesn't have the nose, there's no point going on.
That's right.
It could have the most amazing flavor or finish in the world. If there was no nose, it's not a complete whiskey.
Turn off. So
right.
So the nose for me is kind of like pretty landscaping. It's got to have that's the entrance to the whiskey. So it needs to have a good nose on it to invite you to want more. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You gotta go through the process.
Absolutely. It's your entrance in, just like looking at a pretty house. The curb appeal is what draws you in. So the nose on the whiskey is the curb appeal for wanting to go further to find out more about it.
I think that makes perfect sense. Would you then have the mouth? Would that be the vestibule?
Yes, that's it. That's it, Jason. That's it.
Now you're inside.
Now
you're looking around.
Now we're inside, and we're going to take a look around, right?
So what would the finish be then?
The finish would be the outside, the backyard, all of that.
Okay. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So don't y'all go stealing my analogy, right?
No, it's all yours. You got it on wax today. You've got ownership of this.
Sometimes I do use analogies like that because it makes people think different.
For sure.
The nose for me truly is what makes you want to go further in discovering more about the whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if the nose turns you off, you're not interested in going further.
Yep.
So I said, it's all of it. The nose, the palate, the finish. All of it has to be A+ to make it enjoyable.
I will say, though, since you first mentioned the Tennessee rye coming up with wild onion, if Indiana rye can be known for having a bit of dill on it, what if Tennessee rye became known for having a bit of wild onion?
I think it would be terrible, Jason.
Oh, and see, here's the thing. One of my favorite Scotchies is Lechig. And Lechig has this like Funyuns note on the nose.
Yes.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I've only been thinking of Lechig since you first mentioned wild onion growing with rye in Tennessee.
Well, I respect you, Jason, but we are not going to have that. We are not going to do it. Have you tasted our rye yet?
I have not.
Oh, no. You have got to taste it. The uncut, unfiltered rather. It is only available at the distillery. It's an distillery exclusive. But the 100 proof is out in the market. You have got to get a bottle and try it. It is really, really good. It's a different. It's different. I think you'll find it different from most ryes that you've tasted. But I think you will find it enjoyable. It is 100% rye. The spice level and the sweetness. The balance is just phenomenal. It's good. It's really, really good.
Okay, I like rye a whole lot.
Me too.
And I do like spicy rye.
Yeah, it's
but
good.
I also like balance.
It's good. It's good. Our CEO is not a rye gal until we put it on the market. So she has indulged and she really enjoys it. So. If we can swing her over to the rye side, I think most people will. So it's really good.
Another aspect of the business that I know you are very proud of, and I know that you like having the opportunity to talk about it, is the Nearest in Jack Advancement Initiative. Can you tell us about that and talk about it and tell us what you're so proud of? And I know that Tracy Franklin, one of your first participants,
I am really proud
I've known
that.
Tracy for a long time.
Yeah, I am very proud of that. Again, it goes back to being intentional about making our industry more diverse, more inclusive. And as we all know, there is not enough people of color in this industry, especially in those positions of visibility and decision making. And so naturally Fawn was concerned about that after starting our brand, and so she wanted to do something to help change the narrative. And so she thought of this initiative, and then the Jack Daniel team was really on board with it, and we pledged $5 million each from each of our brands to get this thing started. For us, $5 million was a whole lot of money, being that we were so new. It still is a lot of money because we're still only 5 years old. But that $5 million was worth it to do something that had not been done before, and that was, one, have a partnership with this type of initiative with another brand, and then to shine a light on elevating the people of color. And so one of the prongs of that initiative is to elevate people such as Tracy Franklin. We have two. Well, we had two. Byron Copeland was the first person that Jack Daniel selected, and Fawn selected Tracy Franklin. They both are phenomenal individuals. Brian has since, or Byron, I said Byron, it's Byron Copeland. He has now taken a course of his position with Jack Daniel and is doing quite well. Tracy is still working. She came to this initiative with a lot of knowledge and skill anyway, and she has continued to grow and take classes and travel and get more experience. She is a phenomenal young lady, and we will be hearing from Tracy Franklin for years and years and years. I'm confident of that.
Yep. Yeah, but she's another person we're going to have on the podcast in 23.
Oh, that's good. You will enjoy talking to Tracy. Again, she's full of knowledge. She loves the spirits industry. She's had to overcome some hurdles, but she has done so with grace and dignity, and she is just continuing to do a fantastic job working in the industry. I'm happy to call her friend.
Good. Yeah, I think the last time we saw Tracy was at the Keepers Banquet in New York, and she was part of the address to the haggis.
Yeah, she speaks well, right? I love hearing her speak from the podium. She's captivating.
Yeah. Spent a number of years with Glenfiddich. Is that correct?
She loves Scotch.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
Yes, she does. No, she's great. I was so excited to see her get that placement and know, like you, the good work that she's going to do on the back of that.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, kudos for opening that door, and I'm glad she got to walk through it.
Oh, yeah. Fawn made a wise choice in selecting Tracy, as she usually does. I don't know how Fawn does it, but she has a knack for selecting the right person. It's just one of those things that she has a sense for. And once she selects that person or approves that person to be in that position, she lets you work it the way you deem fit, to use your own personality, to put your own spin on it, to find your own way, you know. And so it's really good to work for a company, to work and build this family that we have with Uncle Near's Premium Whiskey team while being your authentic self. It's a beautiful thing that you don't have to switch up to fit in. Everyone on our team, you know, we just embrace you as you are and let you do your thing in the way in which you think it's the best way to do it.
It's certainly working.
It is definitely working, and you know, I have to applaud and elevate Fawn for that. I've talked about her a lot on this podcast, but she deserves that. She is truly the leader of our squad here at Uncle Near's Premium Whiskey, and we follow her lead, and she sets the example, and we are very fortunate for who she is and what she embodies and what she believes. I think our whole team has benefited from that, have grown, not just as people working in the industry, but personally as well. I certainly know that I have. I am 15 years her senior, and I have learned so much from Fawn, and I'm grateful for that. I really am.
Awesome.
That's
really
beautiful.
Awesome.
I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Do you have another 5-10 minutes?
Absolutely.
So here you are, 5 years into this, and gone from strength to strength. There was a quote from you in an article which I really loved, which was, you know, people were just sitting on the sidelines waiting for you to fail.
That's in the press release, right?
That's in the press release? Yeah. That's right. It just came out. And you said, well, you can all stop waiting.
You can stop waiting. You can
stop waiting, right? So here you are. You really have grown from strength to strength, and it's been remarkable. And so I guess, what are you looking forward to with the next 5 years? What is Uncle Near's going to look like, and what has you excited for the future?
The first thing that comes to mind is our distillery. I am excited to continue for it to grow to continue for us to welcome in visitors from all walks of life every weekend. Looking forward to growing it to where we are doing tours every day of the week. Looking forward to us opening up the longest bar in the world. It's called Humble Baron. It is finished. We are holding special events in there. It will be opening up for the public in the spring. I'm excited about that. I'm excited that we never rest on what we have done thus far. Always look into the future. Fawn is a visionary. She lays out the plan and we jump on board. I don't know, of course, where we will be in 5 years, but I can almost promise that, we will continue to grow. We will continue to add more extensions. There is a wall at the distillery with each one of our expressions that lines that wall. Mm-hmm. We've got a long way to go to fill that up, right? And so I'm looking forward to adding more expressions to the already beautiful premium whiskey lineup that we have. Looking forward to offering a barrel program to individuals, to groups who want it.
Beauty.
We've got a lot in store, but this I can promise for sure: we are not going anywhere. So yeah, people can stop looking for us to fail. We are building out a brand to outlive us all.
Sure.
We still have a lot of ground to make up. We're still trying to share the story and introduce people to Uncle Near's Premium Whiskey. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the hope would be that most people know, and instead of having to share the story all the time, when we mention Near's Green or somebody out there mentions Near's Green, they will know who he is. They will know who he is. Now, granted, as I said at the start of this podcast, I have not grown old, not 1 minute, of sharing this story, of sharing who we are, the brand, and talking about our team and our awesome leader, Fawn Weaver, our distillery. I do not grow tired of doing that, but I'm hopeful that one day it won't be necessary. Now, whether that's 5 years from now, I don't know, but I would like to think that in years to come, when people are talking about those icons in the whiskey business, like especially Tennessee whiskey, like Jack Daniel and George Dickel and Jim Beam, that when they're talking about those folks, that Near's Green's name will be included in those conversations. And so that is our goal, is that one day, Near's Green will be included in those iconic conversations, that he will take his rightful place in having a spot in those conversations. So that is why we do what we do. We pound the rock every day. We share this beautiful story. We pour this awesome premium whiskey. We welcome in visitors at the Near's Green Distillery in Shelbyville, Tennessee, all to elevate and shine a spotlight on this once enslaved man who deserves a place in Tennessee whiskey history.
That is worth drinking to, Victoria. I will happily drink to that.
Absolutely.
With some 100% rye.
Yes, you got to get you some 100% rye.
Cheers
great.
to you. Cheers to Uncle Nearest. Cheers
you.
to the entire team.
Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to share with you guys today. I look forward to one day meeting you face to face, and maybe we can have a glass of Uncle Near's Premium Whiskey at the longest bar in the world. So this is your invitation.
Take you up on that.
Come visit me at the Nearest Green Distillery. You won't regret it.
Awesome. Oh,
Deal.
Thanks ever so much.
Deal.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day and enjoy the holidays. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Awesome.
Likewise.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers.
Sincere thanks to Victoria for taking time to sit down and talk with us. We didn't say it leading into the interview, but it took a little bit of time to get Victoria on the schedule. Mm-hmm. Her timing, our timing, her availability, our availability. It took a little bit of time, but so worth it. And many times through the interview, she made reference to, we're family, we're friends, right? We're in this together, right? Yeah. I really, for somebody who came from a legal background into this whiskey industry, I think she already represents the aspect of this industry that you and I like the most, which is the friendliness, the camaraderie, the team of this, right?
Yeah.
We are in this. And I thought she was incredibly welcoming. It's interesting. As much as we recorded it over Zoom, I felt welcomed into her home where she was recording it.
Yeah.
And right, and it's not a sense that I always get. And we talked to lots and lots of wonderful people, but I really felt like we were sitting around her kitchen table having that conversation.
Yeah. It really. I like the way you framed that too, right? When we're doing these Zoom interviews, which we have been doing since the beginning of COVID and continue to do, and that's just life now. You're always looking at people through those rectangular boxes, and it's difficult to see them outside of those rectangular boxes. But how should I say this? It's almost like going to see a movie with a famous actor, and that actor is so good you forget their name. They now have the name of that character. You know what I mean? And that was that feel. The rectangular boxes kind of went away and got out of the way, and we were able
absolutely
to,
they went away.
You know what I mean? Like that's
absolutely,
that's the connection I'm trying to make there. Yeah.
No. That's my absolute point here. My point of reckoning. So here, listen to this. I'm being a naughty boy. I'm breaking a plastic seal.
All right.
While recording. That's really catching it. In that interview, Victoria had implored us to pick up some Uncle Nearest rye.
That she did.
And I most certainly did not have any. And so I have most certainly picked it up. And this, for the very first time, there's a happy noise there.
Oh man! All right, so I've got to get my bottle then, right, Jason?
Absolutely.
Now, just to be
fair, you've already opened yours, though, right?
I have, and I want to make I'm looking at it right now. I want to be very clear. She implored us to purchase a bottle, which is what we did. We weren't gifted a bottle. We were not sent a bottle. These are our bottles that we paid our money on.
Yeah, I thought I would hold out, that invitation to come to the farm, come to that 300-acre setup, right? To see what they've got going on there. And I thought, we'll pick up something while we're there. And I thought, you know what? I think if we're kicking off season 7 and we're talking about this rye that we were sent to purchase, and now to Victoria's point, this remains a sourced product of theirs. Oh, wow. That was me rubbing the spirit into my hands. So if you hear a rubbing of my hands, it's with spirit.
Oh, trust me, Jason. Our listeners know the sound of your hand rubbing. It's just like that.
I hate to tell you this, that's not my hand. 100% rye mash bill.
Yes, sir. Man,
bottled at 100 proof. It definitely has a sweetness to the nose that I don't normally get.
Yeah, that's so. I've had my bottle open for a little bit now, and that was one of the things that I noticed too. It's at least on the outset, you don't get that peppery quality. There's nothing overly dill-like, and again, this is 100% rye.
Correct.
This is not the 95.5 rye that most people know.
Correct. The thing I was going to add on the back of the bottle here is on the back label, under the government warning, product of Canada, aged in New York and Tennessee, aged and bottled by Nearest Green Distillery, Shelbyville, Tennessee. Like, that's good layers of transparency.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'll tell you, look, can I tell you something really quickly while we're enjoying this whiskey? There was something that I really quite liked hearing Mitch Wilson say. So, as you know, I spent a few days with Mitch Wilson of Black Tot, who we had on the podcast a couple years ago now. And we're going around teaching people about rum. And one of the things that he hates is when you've got a rum blend and they all they talk about is their secret recipe. He's like, secret recipes are worth nothing. They're shit. I don't like them. And so that's why with Black Tot, they're very open about their transparency.
Yes.
And so as he's going through this and talking about one of the components of his rum, the Guyanese rum that has the coloring in it because that's Guyana's tradition to do that, his comment was, this is transparency. Transparency isn't always what you want it to be or expect it to be. Transparency is simply transparency. And I really, really liked that. I thought that was smart, great, a really good way to look at it. And then you could talk, at least you know about it, and then you can talk about it. So I like the level of transparency that they're giving on the backs of their bottles.
Yeah, agreed. To the whiskey, it's so soft. I'm almost getting a marshmallow, vanilla kind of thing going on here. This does not taste like any rye I've had. And remember in our interview, Victoria was talking about having a sweet tooth and liking flavors on the sweeter side of things. Yeah. It's so interesting to have a rye that can reflect that palate.
Yeah, for me, I get that sweet nuttiness going on, that almost like
a nougat.
Yeah, like a nougat, or that you make a nice pie, like a praline pie, where you get some of that those burny bits, that burnt caramel thing going on there, which is real nice. Yeah, Jason, I've got a good product on our hand, and this is solid. Did you pick up any of their other whiskeys? Any bourbon?
No, I'm saving my pennies for being at the distillery and see what they've got on site.
There you go. That's a smart answer. I like that.
Did you blow your budget?
I didn't blow my budget, but I was able to try Uncle Nearest at Whiskeys of the World San Francisco, not 2022, back in 2021. That was one of the first tables that I went to because, as nice of an event as it is, there were few whiskeys that I got to taste. So I went to Uncle Nearest first. And then Elijah had come to me, and he had said, hey, have you tried this Bespoken stuff, right? So then I went to check out the Bespoken table, which was another range of whiskeys I hadn't had. And here we are now having both people from Bespoken and people from Uncle Nearest on the podcast.
It's funny how that works in our life. Do you know what's... I shouldn't say this on wax.
All right.
Let me temper my own comment here. It has a nose that represents the softness of single malt.
Oh, I love that. That's a really good comment, because I think it talks to one of the larger elements of the single malt drinker's palate, where more often than not, a single malt drinker will like rye whiskey a bit more than they will like bourbon. There's a connection to those two spirits, and I think it goes the other way as well. Those that really prefer rye seem to enjoy some of the different flavors that are coming out of single malt. So I really like that, Jason.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the interview. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to speak with Victoria Eady Butler, learning more about her own family history, getting back to her great-great-grandfather, and now getting a chance to taste someone's palate really means a lot to me as well. And I'm really excited to get the distillery, taste their own liquid, taste what they're laying down for Victoria to be blending with, to be vatting releases from. So, yeah, I made this comment. You talked a second ago about recently spending time with Mitch, and so my tasting society up on the Palouse in eastern Washington, northern Idaho, just did a new Kids on the Scotch block tasting.
Yeah.
And I always find with established drinkers that when you share with them the new, there's a hesitancy, right? Well, the new doesn't taste like the old, and the new isn't familiar like the old is. And one of the things that I wanted to communicate to my tasting group was, you're at the forefront of upcoming Scottish history.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. As you sit there tasting Talisker and Highland Park and Bowmore, you're tasting old Scottish history, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But now you're at the precipice of what will become established history. And don't compare it to what it's not. Enjoy it for what it is. And as you and I sit here and we've got this Uncle Nearest rye, this is the Canadian rye.
Yeah.
At some point in the future, there will be an Uncle Nearest distilled on site rye.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a journey. And just like, it boggles my mind that Kilchoman pulled off their journey as successfully as they did. It was so easy to have... Easy is the wrong word in the way I'm going to use it. It would have been easy to poo-poo a new Islay distillery back in 2005.
Sure.
Right? But I wonder if the reopening of Bruichladdich softened that blow. I wonder if Kilchoman had happened before Bruichladdich, people would have said, "Oh no, we don't need a distillery on Islay." Like, what's that all about?
Yeah, I don't know.
We have this storied history. You've also got the closing of Port Ellen. Maybe Islay is a microcosm of a different version of the Scotch whiskey industry.
Yeah, I think you're up too close to it. I think you need to step back and realize that these distilleries were small parts of a much larger wave coming through, and the timing was right, and the investors saw it and helped.
So let me get to the part let me get to what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
The intro didn't work. Let me get to the part I'm trying to say.
Yeah, make it work this time, Jason.
Right, I'll make it work. So Uncle Carl, who's the boots on the ground for the Palouse Whisky Society, I was running over the 5 whiskies with him, and he said, "Okay, this Torrevig is on Skye," and I said, "Yeah," and he said, "Are they trying to be Talisker?" And I said, one of the wonderful things about all of these new distilleries is they're just trying to be themselves.
Yeah.
They are not trying to be anybody, because it makes no sense, right? Like if you're Aaron, you don't want to try to be Highland Park. If you're Kilholman, you don't want to try to be Lagavulin. If you're Torrevig, you don't want to try to be Talisker.
Yeah.
Like, it's never going to work if that's your goal. He, also in the tasting was Loch Lee. And so Loch Lee in Ayrshire, in the lowlands. Okay, are they a typical lowland? Well, a bit like Holyrood, that's not really their goal. Like, they're not setting out to be a lowland whiskey. They're setting out to be a good farm distillery that distills in Ayrshire. Like, it's not, to them, they're not aiming for the category. Their geography is what their geography is. And then they're making the best whiskey they can based on what they have available to them, like their own barley.
So I've loved everything that you've said here, and there's things that I want to add to it. But I want to make sure I'm understanding the connection of this statement to Uncle Nearest. What's that connection? Can you reconnect it?
Yeah, we're sitting here on the precipice of history.
Yeah.
With Uncle Nearest as a burgeoning distillery.
There you go.
Right? Like,
yeah,
you're at the beginning point. It's easy to poo-poo the new. It's another thing to embrace it. It's another thing to understand what that historical point looks like when you're living in it. It's like the question you started us off with in the podcast. Does it feel like 7 years? Well, what does 7 years feel like? Right? There's a time we were new. There's a time we were not new. There's a time we're looking back on our first episode. And there was a time when we recorded our first episode trying to look into the future as to what this might become. And all we had really done was look as far as episode 2. And after episode 2, we looked as far as episode 3.
Yeah.
Now we're planning seasons, right?
Yeah,
or at least half seasons, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what does the first half of season 7 look like? Who do we have? What's lined up? Where are we going here? So, this is all very exciting, but it's so easy to lose focus and to miss context when you're in the middle of it.
So that leads perfectly into what I wanted to be saying is you had said from the outset that you were telling all of the people within your society that you guys are at the forefront of this, yet you're poo-pooing the new. But what took them from the beginning to now the forefront? And it was that discovery of flavor that you guided them through. And of course, they're all on their own individual journeys. But I guarantee early on in their whiskey lives, their whiskey discovery lives, all they were doing was following flavor and would had far less of a chance poo-pooing something new because all of it was new to them. And so I think,
exactly.
Right? So you want to remind those people, and when I say those people, I don't mean like your society. I'm saying the whiskey veterans writ large, that what took you to where you are now? What was it? It was flavor. Still explore flavor. Don't keep fishing within the same pond. There's other ponds to be fishing. There's all sorts of distilleries popping up here in the U.S. and Scotland. There's 58 distilleries in Ireland now, when there was maybe 12 just a few years ago. So keep following flavor. Keep supporting these distilleries that are giving us new flavors. If you love whiskey so much, support brands. Get behind them.
And that's the interesting part for me is when you say you love whiskey, then you taste a new distiller, a new distillery. What do people always say? And we've experienced this at festivals all the time.
Like, I wish it was younger.
It tastes young.
It tastes too old. It tastes too old. I wish it were younger.
Right? Everybody wants to say it tastes young.
Yeah.
It's like, gosh, I wish we could just pour everything blind and have real conversations. Like, it's so frustrating. Anyway.
Was that segment
anyway.
brought to us by What's Grinding My Gears?
I'm really glad that I could open that rye with you and we could taste it right after the playing of the Victoria Eady Butler interview, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I had a hellacious cold at the time, wasn't tasting anything. And so to be sitting here at the dawn of season 7, tasting Uncle Nearest Rye with you. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, so there's a wee toast. Here's to Victoria, here's to Uncle Nearest. Here's to being on a journey into history. Power to you all. Cheers.
Cheers to that. You and I, Jason, we have a bunch of smaller things to talk about, but we all know small things pile up and turn into big things.
They do with us.
They really do.
That is true.
And so I think this warrants a visitation. Who do we normally get visited by?
Elijah. I was thinking Passover as opposed to Amamamamamamamamon.
Yeah, let's pull out Elijah's chair. Let's open the door. I wonder if that's...
And invite in the paper boy.
Invite in the paper boy.
Who this week is played by Frank Zappa.
Moving to Montana soon.
Extra, extra! Read all about it. Life story of Playboy Penny. Extra, extra! Extra, extra! Read all about it. Me and that Playboy in trouble again.
There's a couple of quick things, Jason, that I wanted to bring up, but I don't want to belabor the point because we're going to have some supporting tasting videos. Okay, go easy. Go easy. So we had mentioned in our last extra episode, which is now YouTube exclusive.
Indeed it is. Oh gosh, is it ever?
Yeah.
You see our faces.
Jason, I know that's what you want to talk about. We're not there yet. Let me have the floor still. I know you want to talk about it. Everybody gets to see your face and how lucky they are.
I need a haircut before the next recording.
I tell you, I saw an old recording of us with you in full Gandalf cosplay. It was amazing. I miss those days, Jason, if I'm being honest. Anyway, so we had teased our 14-year-old North British on our last episode of Extra YouTube episode. 14 years, well, basically 13 years in refill bourbon, and then it spent 14 months in first fill PX Spanish oak wood and turned the liquid from a pale straw color to a dark as night, why did everybody turn the lights out color. And it did that without hiding the grain and made a sherry bomb bourbon-like grain whiskey that will tick everybody's boxes. I'm so excited
Say
for this
no
one.
more words. Those are all the words.
Okay,
I love
good.
all of those words.
Good. And I will return to that really quickly in 1 second. We're going to be, and the reason why I'm going to return to that is along with that 14-year-old North British, come this Thursday, which is tomorrow, the day after this episode launches. So what is that? February 23rd February 22nd is when this launches. Come February 23rd, along with the North British, we're launching our first ever I don't want to call it that. French brandy, distilled and matured for a better part of its life in the Cognac region of France.
So here's an interesting part of that that you had told me, and I passed along to somebody else, which was you are correct. It is distillate from the Cognac region of France that we did not want to call cognac because it had been matured in X Scotch whiskey barrels. Mm-hmm. And you were saying that alone didn't stop it from being cognac.
No, I had thought that it was far less that was fine. Our understanding is that is fine. Then we had thought or had been told that if cognac is matured and bottled outside of the cognac region, then legally you can't call it cognac. And then we spoke with you.
Allah are thinking about Scotch.
Right? Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So those are Scotch parameters.
Those are Scotch parameters, so they made sense, right? You can't bottle Scotch whiskey in Ireland and call it Scotch. It's now malt whiskey from Scotland. It's not Scotch whiskey. Anyway.
Indeed.
And then we found out from someone else, they said, no, that should be okay as far as the cognac designation goes. What changed the cognac designation? And again, right, we're getting this information third hand. We're trusting our friends in the industry.
There was me thinking you'd been reading through regulations in French. Like, no, that's not true.
No, not at all. I've just been eating baguettes and just surfing the net.
Talking to people while wearing a beret.
I haven't been talking to them. It's all been in pantomime, Jason. The conversation sounded like this.
You've never sounded better.
So the other thing that we had heard was if you take cognac and you put it into a finishing cask, then that is what breaks. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back. That breaks the rules. So that part I hadn't even considered that a finishing.
Well, we didn't have to worry about that part.
Yeah,
right?
at that point we didn't have to worry about it. So this is distillate from 1989, and December
1989.
Yeah, December 31st, 1989.
I love the way we and yes our own year of distillation.
So we had purchased 2 casks and quite liked them a lot. But both you and I, our palates are a bit different from a cognac palate. Like cognac and Armagnac have that, and we mentioned this in a previous podcast, have that really dry finish, which is sometimes a bit too dry, at least for my palate. I don't want to fully speak for you. And as I mentioned previously, Kirsty McCallum had talked about how in the past when she had spirits that were too drying, that the practice was to take that liquid and put it into PX sherry for a period of time. Not for too long, because if you like the flavor, you don't want to change it too much. But you want to get some of that juiciness back, get some of that dryness out. So we ended up taking the 2 casks that we had and put them into, again, just like the North British, first fill PX Spanish oak wood. And with this, it was only a 9-month finish. And that's where you and I said, you know what, this is it. That gets the dryness exactly where we want it. It gives that PX sweetness coming through, but that cognac grape, that the grapes is still so gorgeous. So like the North British, I think that this is going to fit a bourbon drinker's palate and a malt whiskey drinker's palate because of that sweetness coming through, because a bit of that sherry coming through. And it's priced pretty damn well. $195 for a 32-year-old 1989 distillate French brandy.
Yeah. Yeah, I am sitting here nodding along like a French mime. I am saving my words for the tasting video when it goes on YouTube.
Oh, that's good.
But nosing this, sipping on this, it's a hands down drinker. There's no doubt about it.
It's a drinker and a sharer. Like this is, sometimes you get bottles and you say, try this because you're like, uh-oh. But this is like you need to give this a go. If you've not experienced cognac before or French brandy before, give this a go and see how beautiful it could be. And if people love this bottling, awesome. Check out other French brandies. It's a category to be discovered. Yeah. There you go, man.
Really tasty. I'm just sitting here sipping on it, just nodding my head and looking out the window in a reflective manner. I was really happy with that. That really came together great. But like I say, full thoughts over on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the North British 14-year-old will be on the website starting Thursday, February the 23rd at $115 a bottle.
Thank you.
and the French brandy finished in PX sherry will be on the same date, and it will be 195, as Joshua says a second ago. Both of them will ship together, and shipping will start the week of February 27.
There you go.
For those in the United States. Mm-hmm. If you're not in the United States, however, we know many of you are not, we are closing in on a bottling date for our ROW Rest of the World release number 4. And we will have more details about that when the time comes. We will bring Jess into the news segment to talk about casks that she will be selling around the world.
Good.
But if you are in Canada, Sweden, Germany, Israel, Japan, and I believe, Joshua, the United Kingdom.
Ah, yes, the United Kingdom.
There will be some rather tasty treats coming, and we will describe those in length.
Going to be remarkable, Jason. The bottlings are wild. Anyway, yes. So
They are.
Yeah.
They are. We'll get Jess in. We'll share the excitement around that.
Good. You wanted to talk about extra. I think it's something that we need to talk about a little bit, because it's kind of new to our listeners.
It is. Here we are. We've now got 3 episodes of Extra recorded, released, and on the YouTube channel under Single Cask Nation. Mm-hmm. We have had a request to create a playlist of extra episodes.
Yeah.
So they can be easily found and easily played in order.
As people who don't really live on, don't navigate the YouTube world so much, this idea of creating a playlist for easy access solely to the extra episodes is a new concept to us. It totally makes sense. But because it's so new and because we know so little, really, listeners, if you have any further suggestions on how to, and how we can make our episodes a bit more accessible to you, please let us know. Questions at One Nation Under Whisky or info at Single Cask Nation. It really would be great. We're going to be growing into this, and any help that you could provide would be welcomed.
Have you seen anybody in the comments mention that we need new timepieces because our use of Tight 35 doesn't mean anything for the final product?
I think they kind of agree with us that, the idea of 35 minutes, time is relative, Jason. I mean, Dr. Frank Einstein proved that to us. Frank Einstein.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Frankenstein.
I get what you're going for there. How does Dr. Frankenstein have a connection to time?
Well, it's Einstein.
Relative? That was Einstein's first name?
Yeah, Frank. He shortened it to Albert.
You've only ever known him as Frank.
Yeah.
Francis.
Yeah. Frank Zappa Einstein. Moving to Montana soon.
Prince Albert, Frank Zappa, Einstein.
I heard Prince Albert was in a can, Jason. Anyway.
It's almost like we're doing an intro for Einstein on our podcast. Einstein, a.k.a. Einstein 5 names.
So there you go. So
what were we talking about?
We were talking about our extra episode. So.
But let me say one more thing before we chug along here, which is, for those of you who were used to the extra appearing in your same feed as One Nation Under Whisky. Obviously, we have moved it out. We have moved it off to YouTube. But with the move to YouTube, we have changed how we do business slightly. Mm-hmm. We now summarize a story. We present key points from a story, and we get into the riffing a little bit sooner. We did play a fun game together in episode 3. But we get to the riffing, and then once we get through the riffing, we actually move on to a little bit of whiskey, a little whiskey chat. Mm-hmm. New release, Whiskey Advocate top 10 entry, our own bottling from the last one, as you said at the beginning of this segment. We did talk about the North British for a period of time as well. So really, it's an excuse to talk whiskey and show whiskey and frame whiskey. And but you can, as I alluded to a second ago, you can rest assured that we still get in and out in a tight 35. Sometimes that 35 uses the numbers 4 and 2 or 4 and 4 or other, but it's always a tight 35 in our hearts.
Always a tight 35. We actually received a complaint from Ollie Chilton recently.
Another one?
I know. He's just calling in with complaints at this point.
Man, talk about living down to a Yorkshire stereotype.
Well, so he uses our tight 35s to go running. And so now he's like, well, I can't get you on a podcast anymore to keep running. And I said, but you could just listen to the YouTube. He says, I'm not getting into that. So there you go.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into that. Wow. He's an older man than us with that mindset.
But I'll tell you, it's really easy to do if you had been traditionally listening to Extra Extra and you're a bit apprehensive about how to consume our episodes of Extra Extra moving forward, especially if you listen to them on the go rather than, in front of a computer or whatever. Like, you can listen to our episodes, just open up YouTube, press play, and start your run or start your drive. Don't look at your phone. It's definitely possible to be doing that. I do it all the time. So there you go.
Right. And there's a note in this cognac that I can't quite put my finger on, but I'm going to continue to try to work it out before we do the tasting video. I just keep getting it. One final bit of small news before we close out the segment. Retail release number 9 for Single Cask Nation continues to make its way across the country, continues to make its way to distributors, and continues to make its way to retailers who are putting it on their shelves. Please go search it out. Please go find it. Please support those retailers who are supporting Single Cask Nation.
Yes. Yeah. Just to add to that, our Massachusetts listeners should know that the retail release number 9 just hit Massachusetts and will start headed out to your favorite whiskey shop shelves. So keep an eye out on that. And it's a slow rollout, but that's just the way our country works. Slow rollouts.
Brilliant. Well, cheers to everybody supporting that. ROW, the rest of the world, we haven't forgotten about you. New and exciting things coming your way that we will cover again. New and exciting being on YouTube. Please come find us. Please come subscribe. We'd love to see you over there. And Josh and I keep talking about this off air. We are starting the planning of it. Live extra episode is in the works. And we will make an announcement for when that will be happening as well. So, a bunch of new and exciting things to go with this start of season 7 and everything we've been talking about today.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, I've got an important question for you. We ask all of our guests, well, not all of our guests, but a good number of our guests, what are you looking forward to in the future? I'm going to change it up for you. What do you hope to accomplish in this season of One Nation Under Whisky?
It's interesting that you move that focus to the season of it, because ever since we spoke to Susanna Skyver Barton, I've really had a focus on 2023. And obviously we kick off here in the second half of February. There's still a lot of 2023 ahead of us. But my inspiration for 2023, and now season 7, is to talk grain practices, to talk about the environment, to talk about climate change, to talk about it in real world terms. I'm exhausted by the politicalization of it, and I'm disappointed that a number of us have stopped talking about it to avoid the politicalization of the topic. And I think, for myself, I have been looking to talk more about who's your producer of this? How are you getting this? What's it doing to the land?
Yeah.
What about the people who are harvesting this?
Yeah.
We have Westland coming up, where we actually got to go to Skagit Valley. Those listening to the mailbag episode heard us in the car going there. They heard us in the car coming back from there. Right? We're in Skagit Valley. We're talking to maltsters there. How are they talking to their farmers? How are they respecting the land?
Yeah.
Right? How are they protecting their land? We've got an interview coming up with David Thompson from Spirit of Yorkshire.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And there we get into talking about the land. That was an absolutely fascinating aspect of the conversation. We've got interviews lined up where we could be talking to producers and what does it look like in 2023. This comment has been made. If you're farming the land and you're the person who needs a return from the land to then make sure you're feeding your family, supporting your family, you need that land to be healthy. You need that land to remain. What practices are you putting in place to make sure that land continues to be there for you to use to support your family?
Yeah.
That's not a political issue.
No.
That's a farming issue.
Yes.
It's a production issue.
Yep.
It's a long-term issue, right? And so I really want to have those conversations in a meaningful, boots in the ground kind of way.
Yeah.
I am most excited about that for season 7 and 2023.
Yeah, I love it. I think similarly to you, you're taking on this this issue that you think is important and should be discussed and shouldn't be hidden in any way. And in a similar way, I kind of feel the same. It's the landscape of who makes whiskey, who distills it, who blends it, who talks about it, who we talk to about whiskey. That landscape has changed and continues to evolve. And I like the idea of exploring that further. Again, back to our conversation with Victoria Butler. We're talking about Black history from the 1800s, right? This is history we should be talking about. We're talking about, we've had Penderyn on here before. We've had, Kirsty McCallum on. You hear how whiskey is done through the lens of a female and what that does to flavor. And, again, back to your point, none of this is political. These are the people making the stuff. These are the people selling the stuff. Let's talk to them. It's not just white guys like you and me. It's everybody. Granted, the vast majority of people look like you and me, but we hear them all the time. And there's larger stories to be telling. Back to your point about, your drinkers in your Palouse Whiskey Society. You can get stuck on the same old distilleries, or you can explore and discover more things. Like, we could still just talk to the white dudes in the industry, or we can discover all the other shit that just happens to be going on, and hearing great stories and having conversations with Victoria, having conversations with Susanna Skyver Barton, right? All of these are very important. And it's not coming from a political place. It's coming from a place of, this is whiskey. This is what whiskey looks like. Let's highlight it. That's all.
Absolutely. Yep. yep, excited for that as well. I think season 7 will be rather tickety-boo. Mm-hmm. With that said, I want to close where we opened.
Oh, right.
Which I said I would return to Ryan Fifley's email, and here we are returning to it. And it's the comment he made, and these are Ryan's words. I was fascinated by how the Scotch climate and culture created their whiskey. Now it's my mission to see what kind of whiskey will result from my farm and our climate. I'm curious on your perspective on that. As somebody, when he came into whiskey, were you thinking climate and culture when you got into whiskey? Did it grow along the way? Did it appear one day? How do you think about climate and culture with something like Scotch and other whiskies besides?
Yeah, I mean, first coming into it, it was just this was a product that the Scots made, and I like it. And it sort of went as far as that, and then I would dig into distilleries, dig into blends and single casks and things like that. Yeah, I wonder how much of that issue is part inside baseball thinking, right? Because as a producer, these are things that you do need to think about, right? Your climate and your surroundings and how that affects things. But as one gets deeper and deeper into the whiskey journey, again, back to your drinkers and your Palouse Whiskey Society, they're thinking about whiskey in a different way. And you've got distilleries like Ardnamurchan and Nick Nean talking about sustainability and things. And you've got the UK government looking at the sustainability of peat. You know, it's all sort of really important things. So now I at this point, I definitely think about that all the time. I do wonder if I think about it all the time because we are part of that inside baseball game. We are within the industry. We just happen to be also talking about it and sharing our stories with those outside of the industry. And so I wonder, you know, if we're talking about issues or things we want to accomplish with this episode, does that become one of them where we're championing these ideas, like you had said, back to grain and what that's doing, what climate could be doing to grain? Man, that's a deep question that has me thinking aloud more than I'm actually. Like, I've never just sat and really thought about it, but when we start talking about it, then I can process it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think season 7, climate and culture, could summarize what we're trying to achieve this year.
Culture. There you go. I like that. Climate and culture.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's there.
So
I think it's lovely.
So outside of what you said previously, when I had asked you your question, and then you posed the question from Michelle Pfeiffer here, was it Ryan Feifel?
Yes, that was my first. I thought we were coming from American Tail here. Feifel goes to Montana. I think that was the 4th movie.
Oh my God, I can hear all the xylophones going on. But what is what's your answer to that? Oh my gosh, he's still going. Underneath the flower, then we'll be together.
A whole bunch of stray cats have just shown up at my door here. A whole bunch of them.
Somewhere out there.
And I was still going?
Okay. What's your own answer to that question? The thoughts on climate and culture?
Yeah. Culture never once struck me when I started my journey. Culture. I lived in Scotland.
Yeah, you were part of the culture.
Scottish. Culture never struck me. Yeah. Never struck me. Wasn't a part of it. It was a liquid in a bottle that we made in parts of Scotland. It was absolutely a commodity. It was not a cultural I'm going to say item, but there's another word I was really grasping for there. It just wasn't connected to the people. Climate, no, not a thought in my head. Absolutely not. It was in my early discovery, it was the flavors of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep,
and so
exactly.
I think it's been interesting, and this is always a conversation that we have, which, a number of people asking me, the Scotsman, like, oh, single malt in Wales, eh? Single malt in England, eh? Oh, single malt in India, eh? I love it all. Bring it all on. Why? Because it makes the Scots better. I think we now talk about climate better because we've experienced it when single malt gets made in India, when it gets made in Israel, right? When it gets made in America, right? It's given us an opportunity to reflect on what we've been doing in Scotland for over 2 centuries, right? And I feel like for me at the end of the 20th century, I was just simply living in a place where Scotland made Scotch. That was it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
there was nothing more to it, right? Now, what has always interested me is the historical context for Scotch. The fact that back then you were always dealing with an age statement, so you were always drinking something that was obviously made in the past.
Yeah.
Right? It wore that as a badge of pride.
Yeah.
Right? This was made 18 years ago. This was made 12 years ago. And I always think when you're starting your journey, you're starting with whiskies that were made before you were a drinker, right? Like not even you hadn't got into the category, you weren't even a drinker.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of like, oh shit, this was made when I was 8 years old. Gosh, when I was 8 years old, I didn't have a thought in my head about drinking whiskey. And now here I am drinking that product.
Yeah.
And then always thinking about, okay, who distilled it? Who filled the cask? Who rolled that into its place in the warehouse? Right? Always thinking about those people and the day they'd put in and the money they'd made and, how did they relax at the end of their shift? And I always thought about the people within the historical context. But I wasn't thinking climate. I certainly wasn't thinking culture. Oftentimes because Scotch was trading in the kilts, shortbread, tartan and bagpipes, right?
Yeah.
And in your day-to-day dealings in Scotland, you might have shortbread with a cup of coffee, but you're not really living those day in and day out.
Yeah, it's something that kind of made you roll your eyes a bit.
Right? It's a Scotch culture felt like it was the culture that we exported to other corners of the world where people really dug Scotsmen in kilts playing bagpipes.
Yeah. That's what sold.
Right?
It's interesting. Scotland is known for, that it's such a big part of your economy, Scotch whiskey. Bourbon is a pretty big part of the American economy. Not as big as it is for Scotland, but it's pretty damn big. But I didn't get into whiskey until my 30s. And when I was getting into whiskey, I was not looking for American because I grew up on the thought that American whiskey was Jack Daniels and Jack Daniels was Rock Gut. That's just the thought that I had going into it. I don't know where that thought came from, but it just was a thought. So I never really even considered or even thought about the culture of American spirits at all. I went straight to Scotch whiskey. So, it's interesting. I have such a disconnect. Despite loving bourbon and loving rye and having bottled bourbon and rye alongside there's always been that disconnect with me and my palate to American whiskey. It's always been Scotch whiskey first, malt whiskey is a larger category second, and then you go down from there. And so I never had that thought. I didn't care about it. It just didn't have a place in my life.
Yeah, we could really go down the rabbit hole on. I really want to unpack this more. I hope this is a theme we return to as the season goes along. my final comment is going to be that I love when we talk about Scotch culture now, that it looks and sounds completely different than it did 2.5 decades ago. I love seeing that evolution. We sometimes talk about people we would love to interview. I'm really eager to get Emma Walker on the podcast.
Oh yeah.
The woman who took over for Jim Beveridge to be in charge of Johnny Walker.
Right.
The world's largest whiskey brand, right? I'd love to just talk to her and get a sense of that journey, what brought you here, what guides you. Like, that's Scotch whiskey culture as we sit here in 2023.
Amazing. And right back to what we were saying, it's this issue we keep on returning to, and that's a woman guiding that. I love that.
Right?
It's
100%.
It's very, very cool. So let's make that a goal. Speaking of goals of season 7, let's see if we can get Emma Walker on here. Do you hear that, Diageo workers? Connect us, please.
Diageo workers.
They know who they are.
Paging Google. Google knows who he is.
All right, Jason.
All right, Joshy.
I raise my glass to Victoria Eady Butler, to you, of course, and to our listeners. Here's to a great season 7. I think we've got a lot to do, and I think it's going to be a hell of a ride as we do it.
Yeah, 100%. Cheers to the listeners. No point doing any of this without any of you. Victoria is family and a friend after one conversation. I'm looking forward to seeing her in person. And Joshy, keep up the good work. We'll continue to put out these podcast episodes.
Looking forward to that.
Cheers.
Cheers. Victoria, I am so sorry, and I'm sorry to you, Jason, as well. My recording device was not recording.
Not a problem. We'll start over.
I'm so glad that I caught it.
Jason is thrilled that you made a mistake, Joshua.
He's going to hold this.
Victoria,
now he's going to say, are you sure you're recording?
I'm honored that you're with us today witnessing this moment. Like, I feel lighter. I do feel better.
It's the best
starting to get warm here. You make one mistake.
Gosh. Oh my gosh. For the rest of time. Joshua, you're sure your equipment's running?
Okay, let's do this one last time. We're going to do the elephants one last time.
Okay.
Apologies for that, and then I'll go ahead and I'll re-ask the question.
Let me get a paper towel. I'm crying laughing at Jason.
Joshua, this day.
It's so funny. I leaned over, and what I did is I checked my my volume to ensure I wasn't too much in the red. Meanwhile, I looked away and didn't press record. So
he messed up, Jason.
What I love about this is it's hard enough to tell a subject that you haven't hit record. Like, between you and me, Victoria, I've done that one time without Joshua knowing. And it's not easy to tell your subject that they've just wasted some minutes. For Joshua having to admit it in front of me as well, it must have been so hard for him. We'll never forget this moment, Joshua. We'll never forget.